Huge F1 new 2023 rule will change everything. Following Formula One's rules revolution of 2022, there will be yet more changes next season, primarily concerning the floor, but why does this keep happening? Formula One CEO Stefano Domenicali has no doubts that new regulations will eventually serve to close up the grid, despite Red Bull's dominance this year. So what will be changed in Formula One after these new rules? Let's dig deeper into it. F1 introduced all new rules for 2022 aimed at both improving the racing and giving more teams a chance of success through the gap between the front and the back of the grid getting smaller. This is being helped by a combination of a cost cap plus an aerodynamic handicap system that allows more wind tunnel and CFD development time for teams further down the order. However, as some had feared, the first year of the new rules has resulted in there being quite a big gap between the teams that got it right and those that did not. Ferrari and Red Bull have emerged as being in a class of their own, and the championship battle has been quite one-sided in Max Verstappen's favor. Domenicali is not too alarmed at the situation though, and thinks that as teams get to understand the new rules and the squads at the front find diminishing returns from car improvements, things will get much more competitive. It's clear that a championship with these gaps between first and the second will not deliver the finale we saw last year, explained Domenicali, speaking to Italian media. He also said, but despite this, we have already sold out in the remaining Grand Prix on the calendar. I believe that from a technical point of view, it's important to understand how quickly certain performance gaps can be closed, and this is one of the points on which the regulations were based. He continued, I believe that in the next few years, the regulations will lead to an even tighter reduction of the gap that currently exists between the leader and the rest. With the cost cap being so central to F1's hopes of keeping the field compact, Domenicali is aware of how important it is that FIA effectively polices it. Or if teams can find ways around the regulations, then that risks allowing them to find an unfair advantage. I think it's a crucial aspect, he added. We need to be sure that whoever supervises compliance with the financial rules ensures that everything runs smoothly. Despite Domenicali's confidence that things will close up over time, especially with the cost cap in place, McLaren technical director James Key has expressed his surprise at the way in which Red Bull and Ferrari have stayed clear of the opposition this year. Speaking to the McLaren website, Key said, I suppose I'm a little surprised at how two teams have been able to find that extra bit of performance compared to everyone else. He also said it was a tighter field at the beginning of the season, but it's beginning to stretch out now, and I have to say, Ferrari and Red Bull have done an excellent job of exploiting more. It shows that even within a cost cap, if you're a big team with an extensive infrastructure and a lot of knowledge and methodology built over many years, it still very much counts. F1's technical regulations are in a constant state of flux because the FIA is forced to make changes to keep the teams in line. This is always heightened around the introduction of a major regulation change, such as the one we've just had, which often results in amendments throughout the course of the year, and more importantly, adjustments that will come into force for the following season and beyond. The main changes for 2023 have centered on the floor of the cars, owing to the divisive nature of the teams when it comes to some cars porpoising and bouncing, and many of them feel they're being changed for the wrong reasons. So there has been a back-and-forth dialogue between the governing body and the 10 F1 constructors to find some common ground ahead of the adjustments, with the FIA having to soften its approach when compared with its initial recommendations. It originally insisted on the outer portion of the floor being raised by 25mm and more stringent load tests being applied in order that the floor doesn't overtly flex, thus reducing the ability for teams to run the edge of the floor closer to the track surface and inherit the associated aerodynamic performance available. As a compromise, the regulations have been altered to reflect a 15mm height increase at the outer edge of the floor for 2023, with no more than 5mm vertical deflection when a 250 Newton load is applied in a downwards direction, and no more than 5mm vertically when a 250 Newton load is applied upwards. For 2022, this has been 8mm and 12mm respectively, and therefore requires the teams to build in more stiffness to pad the requisite tests. Changes to the geometry of the floor's edge have also ensued to tidy up any loose ends that the governing body feels slipped through the net during 2022. In a related note, the FIA has also reduced the number of holes required to measure conformity from 6 to 4, with the 2 in the central section of the plank considered redundant. What are the F1 2023 front wing changes? The FIA has both given and taken away in terms of the front wing too, as measures have been taken to further restrict the design of the flap and end plate juncture, which all but rules out the complex design introduced by Mercedes at the Canadian Grand Prix, and which is expected to offer more outwash than was originally intended when the new regulations were framed. The teams will be given a little more freedom in terms of adjustability though, as currently the flaps are only able to have 35mm of adjustability, with the FIA granting 40mm from 2023 onwards. Furthermore, the fillet radius between the elements and the brackets that can be used has been increased from 2mm to 4mm, a change that is shared with the rear wing too. While we're at the rear of the car, it's also worth noting that there's a change to the height of the rear wing tethers too, as they'll need to be mounted 60mm higher than in 2022, with the FIA clearly learning from incidents that have occurred during the season. And in that respect, we have two further changes, with the mounting studs between the power unit and chassis, and the power unit and transmission, requiring a tensile strength greater than 100 kilonewtons from the next season. What are the F1 2023 roll hoop changes? Given the scale of Zhou Guanyu's accident at the British Grand Prix, the continued quest for safety sees further changes made to the roll hoop's design, and the loads it must sustain increase too. These new regulations will likely require some of the teams to redesign the roll hoop structure, owing to increased demands in its geometry 935mm above the reference plane, while any parts constructed above this must be able to withstand a 15G impact with the ground and made from an abrasion-resistant material. Additionally, the roll hoop must now be able to sustain forces applied to it in a forward direction, as well as the rearward forces it already had to achieve. What else is new for the F1 2023 rules? The footage captured from the visor cam has been met with universal praise and is set to become a staple of the broadcast going forward. The FIA has upped the designated number of camera positions from 6 to 7, including one to be fitted facing forward within the driver's helmet. In terms of the car's weight, it's actually coming down a little, with the pre-2022 minimum starting target mass of 796 kilograms set to be reinstated. However, the minimum weight of the power unit has also increased, as some of the associated pipework will now be included within its perimeter. In order to prevent a situation arising similar to ones we've seen this season, whereby the fuel is considered too cool, the regulations have been altered to accommodate a lower temperature threshold. The rule now states the fuel in a car must not be colder than the lowest of 10 degrees centigrade below ambient temperature, or 10 degrees centigrade previously 20 at any time when the car is running after leaving the competitor's designated garage area. The fuel density check will also reduce the tolerance between the fuel being used and the figure taken during pre-approval analysis from 0.25% to 0.15%, limiting further any scope to gain performance between the two. And all fuel tanks will be required to have a pressure relief valve fitted to prevent overpressurization, whilst the maximum internal pressure exerted on the fuel bladder must not exceed 1.0 bar G. So, what do you think about all this? Do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Well, that's it from this video. We sincerely hope that you liked seeing this video. Please subscribe to our channel if you would like to see more of the stuff that we produce. We are overjoyed that you're able to be with us today, and we love the chance to do so again in the coming days. Bye bye.